Hi, I'm Sandra. Welcome back to Create in Spain. I'm going to show you the trifold card that I made earlier. It's this one, and excuse me, I really do quite like this card, but it wasn't quite as straightforward as it might have been. Okay, let me explain. I started off with a rough idea of what I wanted the card to be. Now this was the fold that I intended, and I designed the file in Surecuts a lot, and I had two different stamps to use. One was a bunch of flowers and the other one were leaves. And what I wanted was the design to go from the front through the middle to, from the back to the middle to the front, and to be in continuum. I didn't want them to be very, very different. I wanted them to be more or less the same. Few differences, but more or less the same. So I had the card cut out, and I decided I wouldn't do the card straight away in the best way that I could do it. I would do a test run first, because I know that when you're trying to do a new design file, 9 times out of 10 there's some little tweaking that needs to be done. So I decided to have a practice run. Now the actual cut for the file went really well. I was pleased with that. I wanted to make sure that there was a reasonable gap between the two layers, well, between the 3 layers if you like. The middle layer needs to have a reasonable depth to it, and that worked out quite nicely, so I was pleased. You notice on this that I have graduated colour around the edges here. Now this is done, as far as I'm concerned, I do it with an airbrush because it takes me just a couple of seconds, and if I want to I can do a whole stack of these quite quickly, and I've got an airbrush, I might as well use it. So first of all, I just thought it would be this side that I want the colour on. And then when I actually completed the card, I decided that actually, no, I wanted it on there as well. So I made a note that I would actually do the colour in this area as well. Now you need to make sure there's colour going down that side and not just around here, because otherwise when you fold it up, like you can see on here, you've got an edge. The edge wouldn't be done, and if you want the edges to be done, then you need to do down the creases as well. So I decided I would actually do colour around there as well, and on the back of it I decided that I would just go around here in the same sort of way, but it was a good test run. I was going to put a sentiment on this strip here, but I decided I really didn't like it. I felt it detracted from the card in the end, so I decided not to have a sentiment on the front. So you'd think that having done all this planning, things would work out reasonably well when I actually went to do the card. It didn't. I've dragged this one out of the bin because I think it's only fair that you see the failures as well as the successes. I did all the stamping went fine, and then I set about doing the colouring. And what happened? I forgot that this card is too thin for Copic type colouring, and the colours bleed through and they make a right mess. So by this time I had done quite a lot of this colouring, and I thought, okay, I'll just plough on and I'll try and rectify this afterwards. That didn't work either. So what happened was I thought to myself, well, I'll make some interior panels, some offset panels for the bits that I really need to do it for. So I did an offset for this panel here, and I did an offset for this panel here. And then I thought, well, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a nice deep pink shade around the outside of this offset? And so I got the marker out and I suddenly thought, you idiot, you're doing exactly the same as you did in the first place, because of course it leaked through to that side. By which time I was kicking myself. But I thought, no, this is not going to defeat me. I will get this right if it kills me. So making sure that I remembered my previous mistakes, I set about doing a third version. And this is the finished card. And this one has come out fine. Because I used a relatively thin card, I didn't have any really thick card. It was relatively thin. It's only something like 200 GSM. I decided that it didn't make much difference that colour bled through to the back because I was going to have to put another panel on regardless. So I did that. And I put another panel in here. And I've put Grown Jest for You. And all the colouring that I did has been more or less matched up through the layers. And this is something that you have to be very careful of, that you remember to set aside the markers or the paint, whatever it is that you're using, so that that flower there matches up to that bit there, and that this flower here, for example, matches up to that one. As you can see, the deliberate error, that one's got dots on and that one has stripes. I decided I could get away with that. So you've got to try and match them up as you go, which basically means the best way of colouring this in is to do one flower at a time on each of the layers that it appears. And then you can more or less get it as it should be. The other thing that I decided to do was, because you can see the stem here that I put in, it wasn't in the stamp, but I wanted stems in. And what I did was I took a little bit of carbon paper and I took a little tool which has got a very fine point on here, and I used that to make a carbon copy so that that would actually have its lines on for the stems. Now you have to be careful when you're doing that, because as you can see I have a vase here, and obviously you want to make sure that none of the stems are going somewhere else that they shouldn't do around this bit. But for the bit inside the bouquet, you can do that quite happily. And that's what I did. I went over the stems with a black permanent pen, and then I added some colour to just blend it in a bit. It just looks better with colour on than it does without. Now the base bit here, I copied again, when I stamped, I copied it onto this side. And when I did the front, I did an offset cut on the silver bullet, and having these pieces cut out, I then coloured those in and chopped them off a little bit shorter so that they would go just in front of the ones which are actually physically drawn on the card. So this bit here is a cutout which I have raised on foam, and I coloured this in with markers again. And the card I've used, it's got a texture to it, and this was cut out with something that I was using previously, and it has like a woven texture. So the markers don't actually blend all that well, but it's come out looking a bit like oil painting, which is a good effect, so I'm quite happy. I'm perfectly happy with that. Now if we turn it over onto the other side, you can see I've put a white panel on the back, again to hide all the stuff that the markers did when they bled through. The panel on there, and then this one obviously is for part of the card that you normally see. So there we go. I think it's a really nice card. As I decided against the sentiment in the end because I didn't feel it added anything to the card, and I thought it detracted from the card rather than added anything to it. And so basically you can just put whatever sentiment you like in the middle. Okay, I hope you like it. I had great fun making it, and I will, if anyone wants it, I will supply a link for the file, for the cut file. But you have to request it. If you want it, request it. If you don't, I won't bother to post it. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.